Greetings, friends. It's Josh,
And I'm Ryan.
and we are here for another week on another new episode of the Dead Tired Dads podcast. I'm getting myself confused. That's okay. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and launch into this. A couple weeks ago, we talked about our Christmas wish list, and I am foolish, and I said it in the podcast. I was like, I got something else in there. I know it, and I couldn't think of it. A couple days ago, I was like, oh, that was it. And I was like, I have to talk about this because it's super cool, and I really would love to have it, but it's wicked expensive, and so it's not going to happen. But
you remembered, and it's a good one.
It is. So it's not necessarily video game related, but it's like tangential.
I feel like it's close enough.
It's a tangent.
Yeah.
So I am a big Settlers of Catan or Catan or whatever you want to call it, Settlers fan.
As you should be.
I love Settlers. I don't like all the expansions that they have because it's too confusing. So, but if you like those, that's great. But they just came out with this year a 3D model board, which is like sculpted and hand painted and just like looks absolutely phenomenal. And I would love to have that. So that is the other item on my Christmas wish list that I could not think of when we were talking about that with Matt a few weeks ago. And I don't think we introduced ourselves, so that's my fault. But
we did.
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay. If you say we did,
You were just so excited about
I am
3D
very
Catan
I am
that-
very excited about 3D Catan. It's $300.
Woo!
$300. So usually like Settlers is like a $50 game. So
Yep.
you're talking like a lot more. But it's just such a beautiful looking thing, and everything about it.
It looks amazing. It looks
So-
really cool.
So if you are a Settlers of Catan or Catan fan, that is something that you can put on your Christmas wish list if they're not sold out already.
Yeah. You have a week to find it.
Yeah. They've got it everywhere right now, I think. But yeah, just that's
So I have some questions about it because I have seen it,
yeah.
but I've kind of intentionally not looked at it too much because I know it's just not going to happen for me probably ever. But, when you're playing the standard Settlers game, the board is different every time.
Mm-hmm.
So is that true for this one? Like, is it still going to be random?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. So
that's cool.
the pieces are all like individually like
Yeah.
sculpted and hand painted, and like you still set. Now I don't know how you like. Obviously, with the regular board, you can just kind of flip them over, and you don't know what's what.
Right.
With this one, it's kind of like you can kind of.
There's no flipping those over.
There's no flipping them over. There's no like I guess you just kind of shuffle them around and just kind of pick at random like what goes where. I don't know, but yeah, no, it just looks it's such a beautiful, like I hesitate to use that word, but that's the only thing I can think of.
It does look really cool.
It just looks so cool. It reminds me of the I never got into it. There are some guys that I knew in college that were into this game like Heroescapes.
Yep.
That like you bought all these different like so
you
it was
buy
kinda,
the figures.
Yeah,
and,
you buy the figures
Yep.
and so it's a similar thing to that, but I don't know. I'm just really excited about it, and I'd love to have $300 extra to just kind of blow on that. And you
it
know
does
what?
look really cool.
I might just do it anyway, honestly.
There you go.
So, what I did end up getting, so this is actually, I did get an early Christmas present. This is kind of a secondary Christmas wish list thing.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. I did get an early Christmas present, and that's basically it for me. So the Packers announced this year that they're doing some expansions and some work around their the stadium, and so they opened up as a community-owned team. They every now and then to raise money for certain things, they are allowed to sell stock, and I was able to get online and buy a piece of Packers stock. So I am now a Packers owner.
You are a partial owner of the Green Bay Packers.
That is correct. And so I'm excited about that. And that was actually $300. So I guess like $300 on one thing isn't out of the question.
And now that you're an owner, I mean, like, you're an owner of the Packers.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
Sure. Yeah. I get no economic benefit from that.
When you sent me the link to that, I was kind of reading about it, and I was like, the stock value does not go up or down. You can't resell it. And I was like, so you're just able to say that you're a partial owner of the Packers.
Pretty much. And
it's probably still worth it.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100% worth it. And the thing is, like, you can't transfer it to anyone else other than your own family.
Right.
Like, it has to be, like, passed down, and, like, it can be inherited, but you can't sell it to anyone. But if you try to sell it to someone, and it gets approved, the Packers, it's in, like, like, I was reading through all this stuff, the Packers have first rights to buy it back.
So they get to buy it back first.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And there is a set price that they can buy it back for at 0.0025 cents. so not even like 3 cents. It's like
never
2.5 cents.
Yeah.
So
there's literally no chance of selling it whatsoever.
Right. You get nothing. As Willy Wonka says, you get nothing.
You
sir.
lose.
You lose, sir.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my like that's my like Christmas story. A week early, so
all right.
That's
3D Catan, and you're an owner of partial owner of the Packers.
That's
now,
right.
So
you got anything for us, Ryan? I kind of dominated the intro
no,
conversation.
I had all these sort of after we did that episode on our Christmas wish list. I had all these things after I got home. I was like, oh yeah, I wanted that. Oh yeah, I wanted that. But then it kind of dawned on me that I could just keep going. There's probably like 15 or 20 games that I could have said. So,
right.
Yeah, I don't have anything nearly as cool as 3D Catan, which does look really awesome.
And like I said, like it was something that I had. I just didn't get it written down when we were talking about that stuff, and it completely slipped my mind. So, anyway, why don't we go ahead and dive into our game reviews for this week? You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay, go for it.
Why not? Okay, I played a game called Letter Quest Remastered.
Letter Quest? Is that like, are you a postman?
No, you're not a postman.
No.
I think that might have been more fun. Not that this was a bad game, but that would have been pretty cool, actually.
Letter Quest. This letter has to get to this person.
The way I would describe it is it's like it's almost like a Scrabble or Words with Friends or that kind of type of thing.
That kind of.
Yeah, you're trying to form words. So basically, they take all these super cliche aspects of role-playing games, like dungeon dives, save the princess, all that sort of stuff. And they'll put your character like in a dungeon with goblins and ghosts and stuff, and then you've got like all these letters at the bottom of your screen, and you have to spell words with those letters. And the bigger or more impressive the word is, the more your attack.
Oh,
like the more damage your attack does. So it was kind of a interesting premise. It's certainly unique, which I always like. The only downfall for me about the game was I'm not good at those kinds of games. And it's really embarrassing because I have a master's degree and I'm not good at those types of games. So, like, I'm sitting here and I'm going, Ryan, you should be able to spell more than 3 and 4 letter words. Like, come on. But it was a fun game, and it's super family friendly. There's no violence or anything like that. My son enjoyed watching it with me because, like, if I spelled a word, my little character would do like a dance and a little animation. So it's very family friendly. It is available on all consoles, so PS4, Xbox, Switch, and Steam. I played it on PlayStation 4 because I got it for free as one of the PlayStation Plus games.
Okay.
But I looked up the price, and right now it's about $10.
Oh, not bad.
It's not bad. I haven't beat it yet, but I looked it up, and it's about 8 to 15 hours to beat, which surprised me.
Yeah.
Because I cleared, like, the first screen, or the first, like... As you're playing, there's, like, a map, and... each map or each point on the map is a new dungeon or a new quest that you have to do. And as I was flying through it, I thought, oh, this game's going to be over in no time. And I cleared the first screen, and it just went to a second screen. And so I was like, oh, how long is this game? And I looked it up, and when it said 8 to 15 hours, I was surprised because I haven't finished, but I'm not sure. Other than just doing the same thing over and over, I'm not sure how they stretch that out for 8 hours.
Well, eventually you have to spell words like disestablishmentarianism.
Oh, well, I'm never going to finish the game then.
Well, that sounds like a really cool thing, and it's one of those games that, like, if you've got kids that are working on, like, spelling and words like that, you know, kind of figuring out, like, problem solving with letters and things like that, and words and, you know, vocabulary, could be incredibly helpful for that. And we talked a little bit about, you know, a couple weeks ago with Rocksmith, how games can be used for educational purposes, and that sounds like kind of a thing that could be useful for that if you have kids in that kind of age range.
I think so, and that's something that, as I was playing, that's something that I thought of. And at first, actually, when I first saw what the game was, I sort of lost a little bit of interest. But you and I have had discussions about, in the future, we may do an episode or a couple episodes on that idea of video games being used as an educational tool. And so I went ahead and played it for that reason and ended up enjoying it a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely see it as a thing. My son is 7 and is just now learning to spell, read, write, all that stuff. And so he's not quite there yet, but in a couple years I could see it being a useful,
absolutely,
educational game.
Yeah, we're working on that with my daughter as well, with, like, you know, sight words and things like that she's got in school. And so that's been, you know, I could definitely see that being, like you said, like in a couple of years, something like that, definitely catching her interest. Where where she's already interested in playing, like, she likes, you know, watching video games, and I try to get her to play some, but she has a hard time sometimes with certain things, like just the coordination and things like that. But she does enjoy being able to do that, and so something that she could, you know, get into and also be be helpful for that kind of stuff is definitely cool. I appreciate those kinds of things. So. So I think you know, $10 or less, it would, I'd say, worth it. It is one of those things where, like I said, I didn't get to finish yet, so I don't know if it gets repetitive or if they introduce some new stuff that might, you know, change it up a little bit. But yeah, for the price and the fact that, you know, it can be played in very short chunks, which we talk about. You know, like, you could do one of the little quests in 5 or 10 minutes and be done. So we talk about that, like, is this a game that can be played in short sittings, because we don't always have a ton of time. So it definitely meets all the criteria that we usually look for when we talk about sort of games that work for, you know, busy moms, busy dads. And then it also has the benefit of it can be educational as well. Sure. Awesome. Very cool. Well, so that's Letter Quest
Remastered.
Which is not a mail delivery game. It is, in fact, a spelling game.
It is a spelling game.
Got it.
You are not the postman.
Although, like, I've got a friend who is a postman who, you know, might, you know, like a game that, you know, represented his employment. Probably
That's
not.
true.
Actually. He probably wouldn't like that game.
What's that classic NES game?
Paperboy?
Yeah, Paperboy. Just launching the paper.
Throwing newspapers at doors.
Sorry. Side rant.
All right. So the game that I want to talk about is a game that is near and dear to my heart, because I've talked about a predecessor to this game previously as one of my all-time favorites in our first episode. If you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it so you can get our top 5 games and kind of get yourself acquainted with our kind of styles and how we work. But anyway, we talked about Microsoft Game Pass a couple weeks ago,
that's right.
And we talked about how you get a bunch of free games with that, and how, you know, day one launches available. And so one of those day one launches was Age of Empires 4.
Oh, yeah.
That came out
so jealous
recently. And I had an opportunity to sit down and play it, and I was very much impressed with it, as far as the gaming aspect of it, as far as you know, the visuals, and how they kind of married certain aspects of Age of Empires 2 and Age of Empires 3 There are certain things that that were really good about 3 that they were able to take. Overall, in my opinion, Age of Empires 2 is kind of the epitome of the Age of Empires series. Like, that is what that game should be. Age of Empires 2 is what Age of Empires is all about. But what they did with 4, so they kind of went away from some of those things with 3, but what they did with 4 was take all of those things that were the epitome of Age of Empires, and they added some of the good aspects of 3 to make it a little bit more compelling, a little bit more challenging. So like one thing in Age of Empires 2 that you can basically, if you're playing against a computer player anyway, you can't do it as much against like humans, but basically if you just load up with enough of one unit, you can wipe you can just totally absolutely wipe out an entire civilization with just having 200 horsemen. And it doesn't matter. Like, they can't, you're just going to kill everyone. If you can manage
sweeping wave,
right?
Yeah.
If you can manage to build up that army, you can go through and knock everyone out. With 3, they kind of made that a little bit like the AI was a little bit smarter, and they diversify their units to kind of combat whatever you're making, whatever you're good at. They will combat that with a unit that can kill that. And so they took that AI, I think, and put it into 4. So that, and you don't have to have as much. So that was the other thing with 2. Like, it's literally just build you have to build this massive army, and once you build this massive army, you launch it. Or at least that's how I play it. I don't guess that's how you have to do it, but that was one thing with 3 that they kind of changed around. And so like, you don't have to have you have these like small bursts of units that you can send in and can cause damage, but yeah, so overall, like, it's just like it follows in the tradition of Age of Empires. So it isn't, if you're looking for a new Age of Empires game, it does a good job of being an Age of Empires game that is at the same time, a reflection of previous installments, and also a fresh take on it. So as far as kid friendly, family friendly, absolutely, it's Age of Empires. It's violent, but like, it's not like
you really can't see the violence. I mean, you can zoom in, but no one plays that way. So.
Yeah, and even if you do, it's not like it's there might be blood, but
yeah,
that's the opposite of that movie that came out several years ago with Daniel Day. There will be blood.
There will be blood. There
might be blood. Maybe I'll kill him. Maybe I won't. I don't know. Time consumption, though, on the other hand, Age of Empires is a time-consuming game.
Yeah.
Like, it will, you will expect to sit down and play several hours. You can, if you're playing, by yourself, you can save and come back to it. But, if you're really wanting to get into it, like, you got to have a couple hours that you can dedicate. Basically think, we talked about Settlers earlier. Think of like playing a game of Settlers of Catan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the kind of time you can expect to kind of dedicate to playing a game of Age of Empires. So, best saved for, if you've got the time once you put your kids to bed, that's when you can play it. So if you don't have that kind of time, it sucks that you're gonna have to miss out on it. Yeah. And also the price right now, brand new game, so it's $60.
It's priced as a new game.
Yeah, $60 unless you can get
you have Game Pass. Unless
you have Game Pass, in which case you're getting it included with that subscription. So overall, I would say that if you can make the time for it, I say absolutely go for it. But otherwise, it's hard. It's hard to say, like, yes, do it. And the other thing is, I haven't had a ton of time to, again, like, I've managed to play a couple matches, and they were, like, I haven't played against, or with humans. I haven't had that opportunity yet. But overall, I enjoyed my time. But for our particular brand, It's not something I would necessarily say, yeah, absolutely, get this. Spend your money on this. Although, like I said, if you're a fan of the franchise, could be worth it anyway.
Which you should be. It's a great franchise.
It truly is one of the best, as I have said previously. So,
as you were talking, I had a question, and it's not really related to Age of Empires. In fact, it may take us off on a tangent where we need to do it as a separate episode.
Yeah.
But you kind of mentioned how they borrow from previous games in the series, and they do it in a way that's done well.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking recently, and you know where I'm going with this, or you will shortly. I've been wondering recently where the line is for like borrowing from other games and it's done well versus like straight up copying. So there's a game that you and I have been playing. I'm not going to mention the name yet because I might do an episode on it later. But it's like the first hour or so, you and I both had the same exact thing. Right. And this is just a straight up copy of a much more well-known game. So I'm not going to mention the name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I know
so
exactly what you're talking about.
Where I'm going with this is, where is the line between like, oh, they do this very well, I'm going to borrow from them because it's successful and it is something gamers like, and then the other side of that line is like, that's just straight up stealing or copying.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a whole separate episode. No, I don't know.
Yeah, we totally could. I think we probably could do a totally separate episode on that. But what I would say, there's something to be said. The game that you're talking about is from a completely different franchise in the game that it was taken from. But then you've got there is something to be said about games that like are developed by are not necessarily developed by the same people, but are like in the same franchise because the companies that developed Age of Empires 1 and 2 are defunct, other than Microsoft Studios. But there's something to be said, I think, for, people having the same in-house thing.
Yeah.
So you can say that, but then you've got your games that are just carbon copies of each other that just come out every single year, and it's just the same game, and they haven't really done anything to it. And so I think the biggest thing is time and development, from my perspective anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to, like, you've got, like I said, you got, if you know anything about games, you know the games I'm talking about. You have these cookie cutter games that they just pound out year after year after year, and people keep buying them and keep buying them and keep buying them. But it's they haven't.
We're looking at you, EA Sports.
Right. That is one example of just that kind of mentality of like, hey, well, people are just going to keep buying this game. We're just going to keep. We don't have any need to innovate or do anything differently.
Yeah.
Because we're just grabbing the money. But then you've got Age of Empires 4, like Age of Empires 3 came out when I was in high school, I'm pretty sure.
So that's not just a yearly regurgitated thing.
So it was not like a, hey, let's make a new Age of Empires, immediately. It was, okay, like, oh, hang on just a second. Excuse me. So it wasn't just like a regurgitation. It's something that like the community's kind of redeveloped and came that like a steam kind of picked up in popularity. Like there was this demand that started to call out for, hey, could we do a new Age of Empires game? Yeah, maybe we could. Well, what would that look like? Like, as opposed to like, well, what's the new game that's coming out? Whatever. It's just, so it's, that's kind of my take on it. What do you think?
Yeah, that wasn't a planned question. We have been playing that game that we'll probably talk about in the future that I mentioned. And so we both had that same experience. And then you mentioned Age of Empires 4 and sort of borrowing some parts from previous games, which I think, by the way, is a good thing. Especially when it's in a series like that. Like, hey, in Borderlands 2, people really loved this. So in Borderlands 3, let's do it again. I like that because I liked that about the last game. But yeah, the question sort of just came to my mind
right.
because of what we're
when
experiencing.
we talked about several weeks ago. I talked about Burnout Paradise.
Yep.
And how I picked up that game expecting an experience because it was a
because
burnout,
of what you've had in the past.
Because it was a burnout game.
Yeah.
And it was not the same experience, and it left me disappointed. So there is that aspect of like you pick up a game, you have a certain expectation of what that experience is going to be.
Right.
If it's in the same franchise. But again, I think there is room for that innovation while maintaining the spirit and the whole of what the game is.
Yeah.
Without it being a carbon copy or without it just being, and I think, Age of Empires 4 does a good job of that in a way that I don't know that I've seen other games do in recent years. So there's that for it too. So it's excellent. It's, again, I've had limited time to play it, but that just my experience with it thus far. So
there you go.
So that's going to do it, I think, for this episode of the Dead Tired Dads podcast. We thank you for listening. Please continue to share and like and subscribe and give reviews and do all the things that really help us kind of get this out to people because we're having a good time. We want other people to have a good time as well. So, and if you've got questions or have games that you want us to cover, you can also leave those in the comments. Or,
that's a good idea.
Share it on Facebook. Whatever. We do have a Facebook page that you can go to, and you can leave us messages there. And if you've got something that you think would be good for us to review, please feel free to leave that, and we'll look into it. So
yeah, next week is Christmas, so have a Merry Christmas next week, and we will.
We'll have an episode.
We'll have an episode
on Christmas
Eve.
So it'll be good.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for listening. Have a good week. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.